Hello, I'm Alicia. I've been asked to answer some questions about my autism diagnosis and how it affects my life. I'm 46 years old and I've lived in Berkshire now for 17 years. I used to live in London, but I moved here for a job and I'm still here. I live with my husband and my 2 children. Both my children have autism. My son is 8 and my daughter is 6. In fact, the way I discovered I have autism is that when my son was born, I totally understood everything he was needing, saying, wanting. Even though he was echolalic, he didn't really speak apart from just to repeat the same things back that he'd been asked. I understood him without us having to talk. I thought some of the things that other people thought were annoying or a bit strange, I found perfectly reasonable and logical. As time went on, I realised that something was different about my son, and as I looked up all the symptoms, it became obvious it was always going to be autism. He got his diagnosis very quickly. It was very straightforward. He's high functioning and doing really well in a mainstream school with a statement. It was while I was getting my daughter assessed that the paediatric assessor recommended I get tested and gave me the information for somebody locally who could help. They did help, and I was absolutely overjoyed when I got my diagnosis. It's changed my life. In fact, I'd been suffering from a lot of anxiety and depression in my life. I always knew I was different, but I didn't know how. But the main problem, the main thing that really upset me was how all through school, in every job, in every college, in university, pretty much everywhere I went, I'd get good friends and then they'd just dump me or leave me. And I was bullied a lot. I was bullied all through school and pretty much in every job I've ever had. I never knew why, because I tried my best to be a good friend. I know I'm a loyal friend. And I tried to be fun and caring and kind. But somehow, some way, I annoyed everybody because one day they'd be talking to me and we'd be great friends and everything would be fine. And the next day I'd come in and they'd treat me like I was just the nastiest person in the world. They would be ice cold, or they'd go out of their way to be mean to me and get others to do the same. All this time I knew I was the common denominator, but I didn't understand how. Having my autism diagnosis has helped me to understand why I'm different. It helped me to find other people with Aspergers, which is the type of autism I have. Through them, I found what I call my tribe. It turns out I'm very much like a lot of people with Aspergers. It helped me to feel like I wasn't a square peg in a round hole anymore. It made my life complete. It made me happy. And in a weird way, I'm really proud I'm autistic. I'm proud I belong to a group of people who have the same quirks, the same way of thinking, and the same logic. It makes me feel comfortable to know I finally belong. My autism diagnosis was one of the best things that ever happened to me. It gave me so many answers, and all through my life, when I'd been to various psychologists and stuff, and they never really understood what on earth I was talking about, which I thought was quite surprising and a bit upsetting. But finding my diagnosis and being able to look up what it was I was supposed to have totally changed the way I look at myself. I used to constantly criticise myself, and I still am a terrible perfectionist. But now I accept myself. When I feel I'm freaking out because the place is too hot or it's too noisy, or I just absolutely have to sit in that spot and no other spot will do, and if I don't, I feel really uncomfortable and I can't concentrate, and it sounds incredibly silly, but now I know it's probably because of my Asperger's. I forgive myself and actually tell people why I need that spot, and thankfully, as autism is becoming a lot more well known, people understand and respect it. They don't look at me like I'm just some neurotic, crazy woman. They know that certain things have to be in a certain way for me. I'm very lucky I married a very understanding husband because I have certain things that have to be like that at home too. But he's pretty flexible. I think he has to be with 3 other autistic people in the house. But we all get along just fine. I think the weirdest thing was when I told everybody. I came out and said, I'm autistic and this is me, and explained it. A few people said that I didn't look autistic or they didn't see me as autistic, and I wasn't sure whether to take that as a compliment or not. In one way, I don't really know what autism's supposed to look like. Basically, autism's just like having brown hair or size 9 shoes. It's just a part of me. My personality is who I am. There's no real stereotypical thing to autism apart from certain things we have trouble with, mainly social interaction, certain communication issues, understanding certain nuances that other people take subconsciously and instinctively. But I think that maybe autism has quite a bad image for people to say, I don't look autistic. I'm not sure what it's supposed to look like. Autism basically looks like an everyday person in the street. The different levels of autism, and mine happens to be at the mild end, like my daughter. My son's is slightly more tricky to deal with, but he copes, and he's a really brilliant laugh. But a lot of people said they really respected it, they loved me anyway, they didn't care, and that was great. But the main thing that's made me happy and reduced a lot of my anxiety is the fact that people understand if I make a mistake, I don't know, they need to tell me, and I will fix it. I think in the past people thought when I made a mistake, I was just being, well, mean. They didn't understand that I didn't understand what I'd done wrong. I lost a lot of people I cared deeply about. Some people even I loved. And it was all because they didn't understand me, and I didn't understand what I'd done wrong. With the majority of them in the past, I still don't, but I know for the future, at least people will know and hopefully give me a second chance. That's what my diagnosis has done for me. It's helped me to be more honest with myself and give people a reason to understand why if I do something wrong, I really don't mean it. The one thing that autism has changed for me is the way I feel about my friends. When I had my children, I met some other similar mums, and we became good friends. I was permanently terrified of losing them, like I did with everybody in my life. I was surprised my husband was still with me. But then when I discovered I was autistic and I told them, I felt I could relax a bit more around them. I mean, they always accepted me anyway, and they still do. But it's wonderful to know that my diagnosis means when I'm with them and I overanalyse everything as soon as I leave, I know that they're just thinking, but that's just you, Alicia. We love you for it anyway, which is what they tell me, and I appreciate it. It's nice. I've had friends now, the same friends, for about 8 years, and that means the world to me. Being autistic, especially with my autism, is kind of difficult. My son, his autism is slightly more visual. You can kind of see when he has some issues and problems, and he has terrible problems concentrating. He has the most amazing smile though, and pretty much everybody melts when they see it. But for me, and my daughter as well, our autism is difficult because I can communicate quite well. I'm pretty fluent in language, and when you first meet me, everybody thinks I'm okay at the beginning, but after that things go wrong. That's the problem. I can't walk around with a big placard in the high street saying, "Hi, I'm autistic." Sometimes I'll obviously make a mistake and I have no idea because I don't understand these instinctive social nuances that everybody else just gets without knowing. I've taught myself to read body language. I'm now actually quite good at reading facial expressions, but obviously sometimes I slip up because I'm actually reading them from being taught them rather than just picking it up naturally. So I feel it's sometimes awkward for people like me who look fine and talk properly and seem perfectly reasonable and can have a decent chat about the weather or the trains. But when it comes to the crunch, inevitably sometimes I do something wrong, and it's probably when I relax a bit more, and people then think, well, you seem absolutely fine. Why are you being such a weirdo now? So that's the only one downside, I think. But to be honest, as I become more accepting of myself, I start to be a little bit more honest and open. We're very open about the autism in the family. We call it our superpower, just basically because we're different. I don't think we're particularly great at anything. We don't really have a superpower, but, you know, it's just the way we are. We're very logical, are very straightforward, which unfortunately has some problems. We do tend to take things quite literally. But all in all, it's kind of cool. At least I know. And to be honest, I don't think any of us would change who we are, although I do wish I could understand things just the way everyone else does. But at least I have my tribe. And when I talk to my Aspergers friends, and we all feel the same way and have the same problems, we can have a good giggle about it. I know I'm not alone, which is wonderful. My diagnosis was different to my children. My children got diagnosed, and it was a very straightforward and official procedure, because it was going to cause some problems with their education with school. And that's why the diagnosis was quite straightforward in that respect, although I did have to go to 3 different GPs before someone believed me that there was something wrong. But after that, when they got into the system with explanations and stuff, everything went okay. When it came to me being diagnosed, although the paediatrician that suggested it to me gave me all the information, I had a really hard time finding a GP who would take it seriously. The question I'm always asked is, well, what difference could it make now? You've gotten this far without a diagnosis. I don't think any GPs really understand, well, not the ones I've met, obviously, just how awful it is to go through your life just knowing there's something wrong but not knowing what. Like I said, once I got my diagnosis, I actually felt relief. I celebrated. I knew there was a reason. And when I then started to research it more, that's when I realised that's who I am. And I feel comfortable in my skin. I understand it now. I know what my label is. Up until then, I'd done some questionnaires on the internet. I'd done some research, basically, mainly for my children. But I realised a lot of it was coming up, sort of covering myself. And I had to take a whole lot of information in. And eventually, when I'd seen, I think it was the 4th or 5th doctor and asked them for referral, I broke down in tears. And I tried to explain what the situation was and why I wanted a diagnosis. And they finally put me forward. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Although I'm very sad to hear that a lot of my autistic friends, my Asperger friends, also had similar problems. And some are still fighting years on just to be assessed. I think the NHS don't seem to understand just how important this is for somebody of my age. I do wonder if my father was autistic, because I don't know where it came from, but he also completely got me the way I got my son, so it's a theory. Unfortunately, he passed away over 20 years ago, so I'll never know. But for an adult to get diagnosed, it does seem to be quite difficult. I took a questionnaire that was online from Simon Baron Cohen. That was the first step. And then, armed with that questionnaire, I went to my GP with the information given to me by the paediatrician. It was very hard. The GPs all said there was no one in the area to cover adult autism assessment, but they were actually wrong. And thankfully, I had all the information for somebody who was right in my town. Your children, they need help with education, speech and language, basic occupational therapy things for sensory disorders, and of course, they have to get their qualifications, they have to do their learning. But as an adult, you've already been through that. You've gone through so much time without it, but it really does make a difference. It certainly did to me. I've been quite lucky in the fact that I come from a very artistic family. And because of that, I studied an honours degree in fashion and costumes. And being somebody of colour, I am mixed race, I sometimes have problems with racism. Strangely enough, not from white people, but from black people who hear my accent and tell me I'm not black enough. It's been very difficult to try to explain to them that although I'm very proud of my culture and my ancestors, I am who I am. And I can't really change much about that. But through my art, I was able to communicate. And when in my degree course, we had to do an assignment and design an outfit that made a political statement, I made one about racism, black on black racism. And it was really great to show all my classmates what I've been trying to describe and explain just through my fashion. It worked brilliantly. And I got a lot of support after that. And that was really nice that I was able to communicate that way. I now still do things that are quite creative. I'm not very well. I have ME, fibromyalgia, epilepsy, asthma, a whole host of things, some of which apparently are associated with autism as well. And unfortunately, I am now classified as disabled. My husband is my carer, and he does a really good job. I feel very frustrated. I used to be very active and real sporty freak type person, but now I spend most of my time resting, napping, taking medication and doing my best to put a brave face on the world, especially for my children. But in the time I get, with support from my husband, I make cakes. I'm very good at making cakes. 3 years ago, I started decorating them after seeing some very beautiful professional ones. I wasn't very good, but that's the thing about my autism. I never seem to know when to give up. I'm just very determined, and I keep on, and I keep on, and I keep on. And 3 years later, I'm quite good. People ask me to make cakes for them, but I only do them for friends or family as gifts, so I'm unable to really do anything as a business, which is a shame. But at least I'm still being creative. And I'm helping my children when they have to create projects and all sorts and costumes. I'm in my element. They're also very artistic as well. My son's very good at making comics and animations. And my daughter, I'm very proud to say, is on the gifted and talented register for her art. My husband's a graphic designer, so we kind of carried on the tradition of the artists in the family. Unfortunately, with the disabilities I have, sometimes they do clash with the autism. I'm very, very lucky that the Senko at my son's and daughter's school is very understanding. With my health being the way it is, I get very tired. I can also suffer seizures under stress. And just something as simple as not being able to have eye contact with my children at various school plays is enough to bring on enough stress for a seizure, as once nearly happened at one of my son's Christmas plays. I was so embarrassed, and I was so grateful the Senko found me. And from then on, the staff always make sure I have a reserved seat at any school performance. It takes away so much anxiety, and as such, then it will stop me having so many seizures. So my autism can stress me out in ways that definitely impact my disabilities. But I'm very, very grateful that the label of being autistic means that people understand why, which is why the staff and the Senko understand why I need to have that chair so I can see my child and so I can calm myself down and hopefully manage to sit through a whole performance without any wobbles at all. Although sometimes autism causes me some problems, I'll be honest with you, it's actually quite a revelation and it's been really helpful to me. Mainly for helping my children. I can totally understand when certain things go wrong and I can empathise with them. And I think it really helps them to understand that mummy knows exactly what they mean or what they're feeling. Also, it's really great that I'm able to change a certain perception. Like I said, when people said, "You don't look autistic." Well, that's the thing. Autism doesn't look like anything, really. People do have it at different degrees. And of course, some people have quite severe autism. But at the end of the day, majority of people have autism, like I said before, like people have brown hair or size 9 shoes. It's just something about you. The whole lack of empathy thing is also quite untrue. Majority of autistic people, like me and my children, feel empathy so deeply it's actually really painful, which is why I always have to check the end of a film or a book before I buy it to make sure it's a happy ending, because if it's sad, I know I won't be able to cope with the emotions. And my children are the same way too. So we actually feel a lot. We're very understanding. And my children are very affectionate, as am I. Autism is just a part of us. We're really quite a silly family. My husband and I, we've never really grown up, which the kids like now. I suspect during their teens they're not going to be so excited about daddy shoving 2 breadsticks in his face to make fangs and mummy just making up a silly song about bogies. But that's who I am. I'm grown up, but I'm not grown up, and that's me. But there may be somebody you meet tomorrow that has autism, and they're actually quite sensible and a lot more grown up, because that's them. It's taught me that I'm still myself. I'm still Alicia. I'm still completely dippy, bouncy, smiley Alicia. But I have autism, and so that does make some things different. But I have to say, after well, pretty much a lifetime of not knowing why I was born into this world, because I clearly just didn't fit anywhere. Finding I do fit, finding why, and finding the tribe is actually really, really quite big. It's just the best thing ever. It's just been the most wonderful thing to happen to me. Not only do I understand my children, but I have a whole swathe of people who understand. And to be honest, having the label, whether it's for me or my son or my daughter, has meant the world. It's made such a difference. It's been really positive. As soon as people understand how different you are, they pay respect to that, or so I've found so far, and they know that's who you are. You're not trying to be different or weird or quirky. You are just that way. Like Temple Grandin says, I'm just different, not less. We all are. And it's just the best thing to know.